Have you ever wondered why your carefully curated compost pile takes forever to work, while wild forests grow massive and lush with zero human help? What if I told you that the ultimate gardening secret has nothing to do with rotting vegetable scraps and everything to do with invisible energy? Welcome to the channel. Today we are cracking open a horticultural mystery that dates back over 200 years. We are going to explore a forbidden farming trick from the 1800s that completely outperforms traditional compost. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you will be rushing out to your garden with a piece of scrap metal and a completely new perspective on how nature actually feeds itself. But here is the crazy part. This highly effective method was actively suppressed and marked by early agricultural tycoons. Why? Because you cannot put natural atmospheric energy into a plastic bottle and sell it for a profit. Do you think modern chemical fertilizers are a brilliant scientific advancement or just a massive corporate scam to keep us buying soil amendments? Let me know down in the comments because things are about to get very controversial. To truly understand this secret, we need to travel back to the late 1700s and early 1800s. Long before the invention of synthetic nitrogen factories, farmers relied purely on nature. But some visionary scientists noticed something strange. Plants always seemed to have massive growth spurts immediately after violent thunderstorms. It was not just the rainwater helping them grow, it was the atmospheric electricity. Pioneers during this era began experimenting with capturing the natural static electricity in the air and directing it down into the soil. They called it electroculture. They erected tall wooden poles wrapped in copper and zinc wires, acting like tiny, safe lightning rods for invisible microcurrents. The results were absolutely staggering. Crop yields doubled, diseases vanished, and the vegetables grew to enormous sizes. But as the Industrial Revolution took over, and chemical companies realized they could mass-produce cheap, synthetic fertilizers from chemical waste, this brilliant natural science was swept under the rug. It was labelled as pseudoscience, forbidden from mainstream agricultural schools, and slowly forgotten by the modern world, until now. Let us talk about the giant, smelly elephant in the garden, composting. We have all been taught that building a massive pile of kitchen scraps, dry leaves, and grass clippings is the absolute holy grail of organic gardening. You spend hours turning the heavy wet pile with a pitchfork. You constantly monitor the moisture levels. You worry about the perfect ratio of green to brown materials. And after all that back-breaking labour, you have to wait 6 to 12 months just to get a few buckets of usable soil. It is incredibly frustrating, especially when you have a very short growing season. Modern gardening gurus will tell you that this is the only natural way to feed your plants, but they are completely ignoring a massive invisible piece of the puzzle. What if I told you that farmers over 2 centuries ago laughed at this slow process? They knew about a technique that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and does not require a single banana peel or eggshell. They harnessed an unseen atmospheric energy that surrounds us all. This forgotten science completely changes the game. It makes the slow decay of organic matter look incredibly inefficient. We are about to uncover a historical secret that was purposely buried. This is going to change how you look at your backyard forever. So, what exactly is this forbidden method hiding in the history books? It all comes down to the science of atmospheric gardening, widely known as electroculture. Now, before you imagine plugging your tomato plants directly into a wall outlet, let me explain. The Earth operates as a massive battery. The sky holds a positive electrical charge, while the ground holds a negative electrical charge. Every single day, unseen microcurrents of electricity are constantly flowing between the atmosphere and the soil. This natural energy field is what actually stimulates plant cells to divide, grow, and absorb nutrients. In the 1800s, clever farmers figured out a way to capture this ambient energy. They did not use artificial power sources. They simply built antennas to act as a bridge between the sky and the dirt. By placing specific conductive metals into the soil, They created a superhighway for these natural electrons. This rush of energy acts like an instant cup of coffee for the roots, while your compost pile is slowly rotting away, waiting for bacteria to do the heavy lifting. An atmospheric antenna is actively pumping life force directly into the root zone every single second. It is clean, it is silent, and it never stops working. Let us break down exactly how this physical setup works, because it is surprisingly simple. You do not need an engineering degree or thousands of dollars of equipment. The most common historical design involves a simple wooden stick and some bare copper wire. The wooden dowel acts as a stable support. You take the copper wire, tightly wrap it around the wood in a specific spiral pattern, and leave a long piece of the wire pointing straight up toward the sky. Then you bury the bottom portion of this homemade antenna deep into the soil right next to your plant. That is literally it. The copper acts as a highly conductive receiver. It catches the subtle frequencies, magnetic waves, and atmospheric static electricity blowing through the wind. Because copper is incredibly efficient at moving energy, those captured electrons travel straight down the spiral and are released directly into the dirt. Think of it like a funnel catching rainwater, but instead of water, you're catching invisible electrical nutrition. When this happens, the soil becomes electrically charged. This is where the magic truly begins, and where compost gets left completely in the dust. But if this is so amazing, why on earth was it banned and forgotten? This is where the story gets incredibly dark. In the early 1900s, massive chemical corporations began to rise to extreme power. They had figured out how to synthesize nitrogen and create highly concentrated, artificial fertilizers. But they had a major problem. They needed repeat customers. If a farmer builds a copper antenna once, it lasts for decades. It never runs out, and it provides free energy forever. The chemical companies could not compete with free, so they launched massive smear campaigns against atmospheric gardening. They funded biased university studies designed to make the pioneers of electroculture look like complete crazy people. They lobbied governments to rewrite agricultural textbooks. Slowly but surely, the science of natural earth energy was labelled as a hoax. Farmers who continued to use antennas were mocked and pushed out of the industry. The giant corporations effectively outlawed the teaching of this method in formal education. They convinced the entire world that plants only eat physical matter and that you must buy their bags of white powder to get a good harvest. This leads us perfectly to one of the biggest myths we need to completely debunk right now. The myth is that plants only survive by consuming physical, tangible matter, like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. We have been brainwashed to think of plants like little machines that just need physical fuel. But the reality is far more complex. Nutrients in the soil are completely useless if the plant cannot absorb them. And what drives absorption? Electrical impulses. In order for a plant root to pull a mineral out of the dirt, there must be an electrical exchange. By adding an atmospheric antenna to your garden, you are dramatically increasing the voltage of the soil. This makes the existing nutrients incredibly easy for the plant to digest. Imagine trying to drink a thick milkshake through a tiny crushed straw. That is a plant in regular soil. Now imagine drinking that same milkshake through a giant wide pipe. That is a plant in electrified soil. You do not always need more compost. Often, your soil already has plenty of nutrients. The plants just do not have the electrical energy required to eat them. The copper wire solves this problem instantly. Let us look at a truly incredible historical example to prove this is not just theory. In the late 1800s, a French scientist began rigorously testing this method on ordinary garden crops. He set up standard control plots with normal fertilizer and experimental plots using nothing but atmospheric antennas. The results made national headlines. His cabbage plants grew to absolutely monstrous sizes, with some weighing over 40 pounds each. His potato yields were 3 times higher than the surrounding farms, and his strawberries were reported to be sweeter, larger, and completely free of disease. These were not genetically modified super seeds. These were standard heirloom varieties exposed to concentrated natural electricity. People travelled from all over Europe to witness his towering crops. The visual proof was undeniable. When you see a photograph from the era showing a farmer standing next to a leafy green plant that is taller than a grown man, you start to realise exactly what we have lost. The energy from the atmosphere allowed the plant cells to expand and multiply at a rate that traditional compost simply cannot support. Now you might be wondering, what exactly happens to the microbes in the soil when you introduce this copper wire? This is where the compost lovers are going to be shocked. We know that healthy soil requires billions of beneficial bacteria and fungi. Composting is basically just farming these microbes. But here is the secret. Those microbes thrive on microcurrents. When the electrical charge of the soil is increased by an antenna, the reproductive rate of beneficial bacteria skyrockets. They become hyperactive. They break down whatever organic matter is present at lightning speed. So, instead of waiting for a separate compost pile to rot for a year, the microbes in your actual garden beds do the work almost instantly. The electricity creates an optimal environment for microscopic life. The soil becomes loose, airy, and incredibly rich. Earthworms are naturally drawn to the gentle magnetic field, tunneling through your roots and providing their own natural fertilizer. You are basically turning your entire garden bed into a supercharged, living compost bin without having to shovel heavy loads of rotting vegetables. Let us compare the actual timelines because time is a gardener's most precious resource. Let us say you start a brand new garden today. If you go the traditional route, you need to build a compost bin. You wait for months, hoping it gets hot enough to kill weed seeds. You constantly turn it to add oxygen. Maybe by next spring you will have enough compost to dress a few of your beds. Now consider the alternative. You buy a spool of copper wire and a few wooden stakes for less than $10. You spend one afternoon wrapping the antennas and placing them in the dirt next to your seeds. From the very second that copper touches the earth, the circuit is complete. The atmospheric energy begins flowing immediately. Your plants receive the benefits on day one. There is absolutely no waiting period. The seeds germinate faster because the electrical field stimulates the dormant embryos. The roots push deeper because they are following the magnetic currents. You save an entire year of waiting and hundreds of hours of manual labour just by tapping into the natural physics of the planet. Another crucial element of this forbidden trick involves the Earth's magnetic field. This is something ancient civilizations understood deeply, but modern agriculture completely ignores. The Earth is essentially a giant magnet, with lines of force running from the North Pole to the South Pole. In the 1800s, practitioners of electroculture did not just place their antennas randomly. They'd learned to align their garden beds and the antennas themselves with the magnetic north. By doing this, they created a harmonious flow of energy that matched the planet's natural rhythm. It is like swimming with the current instead of fighting against it. When copper antennas are aligned correctly, they catch the magnetic waves far more efficiently. This subtle alignment has been shown to dramatically increase the resilience of the plants. They become incredibly strong, growing thicker stalks and deeply anchored root systems. Modern farmers just dump tons of compost on a field without ever considering the invisible magnetic layout of their land. By simply using a cheap compass to map your garden, you unlock a level of growth that fertilizer alone can never achieve. I know what some of you are thinking. We need to debunk another major fear right now. The myth is that putting metal wires in the ground is going to electrocute your plants or shock you when you walk barefoot in the garden. This is a complete misunderstanding of the science. We are not dealing with the high-voltage electricity that comes out of your wall socket. We are talking about microvolts and subtle millivolts of natural static energy. It is entirely invisible and completely painless. You cannot feel it, and it absolutely will not fry your tomatoes. In fact, human beings evolved walking barefoot on the earth, absorbing these exact same microcurrents for our own health. The plants are naturally designed to process this gentle atmospheric charge. Think of it like a gentle, constant breeze rather than a violent hurricane. The copper wire just gathers that gentle breeze and focuses it exactly where the plant needs it most. It is 100% safe for your pets, your children, and the countless beneficial insects living in your backyard ecosystem. One of the most mind-blowing benefits of this 1800s technique is how it changes the way soil handles water. Anyone who relies purely on compost knows that during a hot summer drought, compost can dry out quickly and become crusty. You end up having to water your garden twice a day just to keep things alive. But when you introduce atmospheric antennas, something magical happens to the water molecules. The subtle electrical field actually alters the surface tension of the water in the soil. It structures the water, making it much easier for the soil particles to hold on to moisture for long periods of time. The roots can absorb this structured water much more efficiently. Historical records from farmers using this method consistently show that their electrified fields required up to 50% less irrigation. Even during severe droughts, their crops remained lush and green, while the neighbouring farms withered away. By simply capturing the sky's electricity, you are fundamentally changing the hydration mechanics of your garden. This alone makes it vastly superior to just dumping another layer of compost. Let us talk about pests, because this is where the story gets really fascinating. Every organic gardener's worst nightmare is an infestation of aphids, slugs, or hornworms. Usually the solution is to spray harsh chemical pesticides or buy expensive organic deterrents. But the pioneers of electroculture noticed something strange. Their electrically charged plants were rarely attacked by bugs. Why? Because insects operate on very specific biological frequencies. Many garden pests are naturally drawn to weak, sick plants that emit a low-frequency stress signal. But a plant connected to an atmospheric antenna is vibrating with high, healthy energy. Furthermore, the localized magnetic field created by the copper wire naturally disorients and repels many common pests. It scrambles their navigation systems. Slugs hate the microelectric charge on the soil surface. Aphids cannot process the high sugar content in the electrified plant sap. You are essentially putting an invisible energy shield around your vegetables. You get stronger plants and a naturally bug-resistant garden without ever spraying a single toxic drop. Let me give you a brilliant example of a modern gardener who decided to test this old myth. She had a long, raised bed of tomatoes. She filled the entire bed with the exact same soil and the exact same premium compost, but on one half of the bed, she installed simple wooden stakes wrapped in copper wire. On the other half, she did absolutely nothing. For the first week, they looked identical, but by week 3, the difference was absolutely shocking. The tomatoes with the atmospheric antennas were twice as tall. Their leaves were a much deeper, richer shade of dark green. When they finally started producing fruit, the electrified side produced massive, heavy clusters of tomatoes that ripened a full 2 weeks earlier than the control side. Same sunlight, same water, same compost. The only variable was a few dollars worth of scrap copper wire pulling electricity from the air. When you see a side-by-side comparison like this in real life, the illusion of the modern fertilizer industry completely shatters. It is undeniable proof that the 1800s farmers knew exactly what they were doing. To take this forbidden trick to the absolute next level, advanced practitioners in the 1800s combined 2 different metals. They did not just use copper, they used copper and zinc. This is a game changer. When you place copper, which acts as a positive conductor, near zinc, which acts as a negative conductor, right in the damp soil, you are literally creating a galvanic battery. The moisture and the minerals in the earth act as the battery acid. This creates an even stronger, continuous flow of electrons directly into the root system. It creates a subtle but powerful magnetic vortex underground. This specific combination was heavily researched by early scientists who patented the designs because the crop yields were so unbelievable. Of course, those patents were mysteriously bought out and hidden away by the growing chemical monopolies, but the physics remain exactly the same today. By twisting a piece of copper wire and a piece of galvanized steel wire around a stick, you are recreating a suppressed technology that forces massive cellular growth in any plant you choose. We need to talk about overcoming the snake oil stigma. When you tell your neighbour that you are fertilizing your garden with invisible sky electricity, they are probably going to laugh at you. And that is exactly what the giant agricultural corporations want. They have spent over a century conditioning the public to believe that real farming requires huge bags of processed chemicals. They want you to think that any alternative is just magical thinking or hippie nonsense. But this is grounded in hard, undeniable physics. Plants are electrical beings. Every single cell membrane operates on electrical voltage. Photosynthesis itself is an electron transfer process. When you accept the scientific reality that plants run on electricity, building an antenna to provide more of it makes perfect logical sense. Do not let the modern brainwashing keep you trapped in the cycle of buying endless bags of dirt. The historical records, the old patents, and the countless modern experiments all point to one truth. The method is real, it is powerful, and it is entirely free once you set it up. Let us break down the harsh financial reality and compare the actual costs. If you want to build a proper composting system, you need to buy a tumbler or build expensive wooden bins. You might spend anywhere from $50 to $200 just getting started. Then you have to buy compost starters, maybe some worms, and spend countless hours of your own physical labour. If you buy bagged compost from the garden centre, you are spending $10 to $20 a bag every single season. It is a never-ending expense. Now let us look at electroculture. You can go to a hardware store and buy a spool of bare copper wire for less than $15. You can find sturdy branches in the woods for free. You wrap the wire, stick it in the ground, and you are completely done. That single $15 investment will cover an entire garden bed and will literally last for 20 years. The wire does not evaporate. The sky does not run out of electricity. The cost-to-benefit ratio is so heavily tilted in favour of atmospheric antennas that it makes traditional purchasing of fertilizers look like an absolute financial scam. The best part about this forbidden technique is its extreme versatility. You do not need a massive 10-acre farm to make this work. If you live in a tiny urban apartment and only have a few potted plants on a small balcony, you can absolutely use this trick. You just scale it down. Take a small wooden skewer, wrap it tightly with a thin copper wire, and poke it into the potting soil next to your houseplant. You will watch your struggling indoor pothos or fiddle leaf fig suddenly explode with new leaves within a matter of weeks. The ambient electrical fields inside your home, combined with the atmospheric pressure from the window, is more than enough to trigger the response. For large-scale backyard farmers, you can run long copper wires high above the garden beds, acting like a giant electrical net that rains energy down onto the crops. No matter what your living situation is, you can tap into this 1800s secret. Nature does not discriminate. The energy is freely available everywhere on the planet, just waiting for a conductive path to the soil. Now, I want to clarify something very important about the synergistic effect. I am not telling you that compost is pure evil, or that you should throw your kitchen scraps in the garbage. Organic matter is still fantastic for the structure of your dirt. But here is the ultimate master trick. You do not have to choose one or the other. When you combine the physical organic matter of a light compost with the raw electrical power of an atmospheric antenna, you create an unstoppable biological engine. The copper wire actually turbocharges the compost you already have. It helps the compost break down faster directly inside the garden bed, releasing its nutrients instantly instead of slowly over a whole season. You can use 50% less compost, put in 50% less physical effort, and get yields that are 200% larger. The antenna is the spark plug, and the compost is the fuel. Together, they create a perfect growing environment that completely bypasses the slow, frustrating wait times of traditional organic farming. Let us also consider the massive environmental impact of this forgotten science. Modern chemical fertilizers are destroying the planet. They burn the topsoil, destroy the natural fungal networks, and run off into our rivers, causing massive toxic algae blooms. Even large-scale commercial composting operations require heavy diesel machinery to turn the piles and transport the dirt. By reviving this forbidden 1800s trick, you are stepping completely off the industrial grid. You are using zero fossil fuels. You are generating zero toxic runoff. You are simply acting as a conductor for the Earth's natural energetic heartbeat. Electroculture actually heals the soil over time. It restores the natural magnetic balance that has been disrupted by heavy machinery and synthetic chemicals. By placing a few pieces of copper wire in your backyard, you are taking a quiet but incredibly powerful stand against the destructive practices of modern corporate agriculture. You are returning to a method of farming that respects the planet and works in perfect harmony with the atmosphere. As we dig deeper into this mystery, it becomes crystal clear why this knowledge was kept from us. True power lies in self-sufficiency. If every family could grow massive, nutrient-dense vegetables in their own backyard, using nothing but scrap wire and the open sky, the multi-billion-dollar grocery and chemical industries would collapse overnight. They rely on our dependency. They want us to believe that growing food is incredibly difficult, expensive, and requires a chemistry degree. But the clever farmers of the 1800s proved them wrong long before their toxic empires were even built. They proved that the universe provides everything we need. The energy is literally buzzing in the air, right above our heads every single moment of the day. All it takes is a little bit of forgotten wisdom, an open mind, and a piece of copper to unlock the greatest garden you will ever grow. The secret is out, the science is real, and the control of your food supply is finally back in your own hands. And there you have it, the ultimate twist. The greatest farming secret in history does not come in a plastic bag, and it does not take a year to rot in a smelly pile. The secret is literally floating in the air around us, right this very second. By simply wrapping a stick with copper wire, you are bypassing the slow, agonizing weight of traditional compost and tapping directly into the boundless atmospheric energy of the earth. We have uncovered how early pioneers used this exact method to grow giant, disease-free crops, and exactly why massive corporations work so hard to bury this knowledge and keep you dependent on their expensive chemicals. It is time to take our power back and grow food the way nature intended. Thank you so much for watching and exploring this forbidden history with me. If this video opened your eyes, please hit that subscribe button, give it a big thumbs up, and share it with a fellow gardener. Now I want to hear from you. What is the very first plant you are going to test with a copper atmospheric antenna? Drop your answers down in the comments and let us start a revolution in our backyards.